my best friend, but I try not to think about her. It's only on certain nights when I'm all alone in my room, that's when I remember. It was during Christmas vacation last year when Susan asked me over to her house. She lived in a big gloomy house set back from the road, and she didn't want to stay there alone at night. See, our parents had gone to visit some friends, and they won't be back until the next afternoon. Susan said we'd have fun without them, and we did. At about 12 o'clock, we decided to get dressed for bed. Susan had gotten this velvet night robe for Christmas. Had a thick fur collar, and it was blood red velvet. She looked like someone from a Dracula movie wearing it. We turned off the television, and we started to go upstairs. We hadn't noticed it before, but the downstairs now seemed too big, almost sinister. Suddenly, we started to run up the stairs, and if someone was coming up from behind us, we shut Susan's bedroom door, and then we laughed at ourselves, but neither one of us wanted to leave the room again. That's when we first heard the noise.
It sounded like someone was sharpening a knife in an old emery stone. We stopped talking, and we looked at each other, feeling really scared inside. There was this thick silence in the room. Suddenly, Susan started to laugh. She said she had heard that sound before. She said it was probably the shutters or something. That made me feel better, and we started to talk again. But then, we heard it again. Screech! Screech! The sound made my teeth vibrate as if someone was scratching their nails on a chalkboard. But this sound was much worse. It shrieked up from the dark, lonely rooms below us. Screech! Suddenly, Susan looked at me. She had a wild look in her eyes. And before I could catch her, she ran out of the room. I tried to stop her, but she slammed the door shut and flipped off the light switch. I heard her walk down the first flight of stairs and then stop. I sat in the dark, sick with fright. I called out Susan's name, but I was answered by a hushed silence. I didn't want to stay in the dark room alone, but even more, I didn't want to go out into that other silence.
Screech! I heard it again, that disgusting sound. Then I heard Susan's footsteps moving down the next and final flight of stairs. She went more slowly, as if she really, really didn't want to. I heard her reach the bottom, and I waited in the room, wondering what Susan was doing. I told myself that she must be all right. You see, the noise had stopped right after I heard her reach the bottom of the stairs, and it didn't happen again. I told myself that she probably just turned off the shutters to stop them from making the noise. And then I thought, maybe she knew for sure about that all along, and that she was just trying to scare me. Or maybe she was sitting on the steps now, laughing at me. I got up and walked towards the door to turn the light on. But a sudden feeling of fear swept over me that held me back like a hand against my throat. I decided I would stay in the room and wait for Susan to return. I would stay there and wait for her parents to return if necessary. Nothing would make me leave my darkness for that darker unknown outside the room. Time passed. My ears strained for a sound and my nerves tingled at imagined shadows. Nothing could make me leave. Then I heard a slow, shuffling noise on the bottom step. Was it Susan? It had to be. Yet the footsteps, they seemed too heavy and too deliberate.
My heart began to pound, and for a moment I lost control of my mind. It flew to the most horrible corners of my imagination as I shook with terror. Then, suddenly, I knew what I would do. Susan's new night robe with a furry collar. I'd wait for the door to open, and I'd reach out and touch the person's neck. If I felt the furry collar, I know it would be Susan. I'd get her back to scaring me like this. But if I reached out and didn't feel the collar, well, then there was nothing that I could do. The shuffling footsteps had reached the second flight of stairs. I forced my own feet to take the steps to get near the door of the room. I felt the skin crawl on my back as the footsteps reached the top step and moved over to the hallway. I braced myself. The door creaked slightly as it swung open. I reached my arm out and hoped. Okay, so imagine that you are the character in this story now, and in the boxes in front of you, reach out behind the door and feel the teeth. And then we'll find out what she actually felt. It's not that bad.
Very good.
My fingers closed around collar. My body drained with relief. I moved my hand up to touch Susan's face. I was so happy. I no longer wanted to scare her. But as my fingers moved up from the furry collar, there was nothing. Only the blood stump where Susan's head had been.
Ooh.